Welcome back to #Fempire, the podcast where we dig into bold ideas, radical reimaginings, and the inspiring women who are reshaping the world in thoughtful, grounded ways. Today's guest is someone who will change the way you think about dirt. Yes, I said it, dirt. Destiny Allen Green is an environmental scientist, holds a master's degree in land and water systems, and is a proud Black Afro-Métis daughter of the Underground Railroad and the First Peoples of Turtle Island. She is a scientist by trade, an innovator by night, and a farmer by experience, but maybe not in the traditional way you might be picturing. Just as Destiny's ancestors tended to the lands of Turtle Island for generations, carrying their Indigenous wisdom across oceans, she too seeks to be in deep and respectful relationship with the land. With farming roots that stretch across both sides of her family, Destiny proudly identifies as a small-scale, unconventional farmer. Her mission is to help others discover the joys of everyday farming as a powerful way to reconnect with the land, with themselves, and with our shared stories. Destiny is the co-founder and owner of Farmers, the Future Agrarians Reciprocity Movement for Earth, Relationships, and Story. Together with her friend and fellow environmental scientist, Maya Summers, this powerful duo are developing programs that help people reconnect with the earth and reimagine what it means to be a farmer. They break down the myth that you need acres of land or a perfect garden bed to grow something and make a meaningful impact on the earth. Instead, they teach you how to shift your mindset, make your gardening reflect a piece of you and your history, and most importantly, embrace the simple, powerful act of getting your hands in the dirt to build a new kind of relationship with the land. In this episode, Destiny shares how tending to the land, even in urban settings, like on a windowsill or in a balcony planter, can shift our mindset from consumption to connection, from overwhelm to action. We talk about environmental justice, the impacts of climate change, the radical accessibility of gardening, and how small, consistent acts of care can become powerful expressions of environmental stewardship. This is a conversation about reclaiming our place in the natural world and remembering that healing the earth isn't about being perfect, it's about participating. So, let's get into it. And I want to shift the conversation a little bit as well, that Farmers stands for some key pillars around justice, empathy, and belonging. They're all deeply connected to our relationship with the land. Can you share how that idea is showing up in your work and why it's so central to the vision behind Farmers?
So, thinking first around justice, I truly believe that it is just for us all to have access to the land, period. I think that we should all be able to make a connection with the natural world. I don't think that that should be something that is difficult for folks in urban areas to do. I don't think it should be difficult for low-income folks. I don't think it should be difficult for anyone. I think that, like you say, I mean, there are so many benefits to being connected with the land, putting our hands in the soil, etc. Like, there are benefits for us all to have and gain from those experiences, and they shouldn't be cut off from certain individuals due to circumstance. So I think part of the work of Farmers that's related to that justice component is just giving people a way of reimagining how they can connect with the land wherever they are. It could be a very small way. It could be, if you're in an urban area, you're not surrounded by any plants. Can you grow plants where you're living inside? If you can't do that or you don't feel like you're prepared to do that, can you notice a bird song, outside? There are so many small ways that we can connect with the land, and we believe that just those small steps make a difference. And as you start to notice the birds, maybe you start to think about, well, what do the birds need to eat? Like, where are they getting what they need? Perhaps the bird sound is reminding you of the buzzing bees or something. There's just so many connections. You don't know what will come up for you as you at least start to connect in that way. And so we really just believe that It's just for us to make those connections, and it's important. And if we're able to contribute to some of those barriers coming down, that's what we want to do. And I think that all of that is quite related through belonging and empathy and all of that as well. I've sort of mentioned in some of my other answers, we are connected to all of the natural beings around us. And so naturally, we belong together. I think like it's very simple to just say, but I think in practice, it can be difficult to experience perhaps, or we forget or we lose sight of it. But I think that it's something very simple. We shouldn't be seeing ourselves as disconnected. So how can we reconnect? And as we do that, we'll naturally be reacquainted with that sense of belonging that we have lost.
Beautifully said. And I also want to point to part of your mission is reclaiming that farmer narrative. And we touched on a few of those themes in your responses, but could you maybe elaborate a little bit more? Like, what do you mean by that? And why is it important to challenge that traditional image of who a farmer is and what farming looks like? Because I think we can all default of like, a white guy with a straw hat and like a pitchfork, right? Like that famous image. But, in today's time and age and urban settings, like what does that look like and why is it important to reclaim that narrative, do you think?
Yeah, I think there are so many reasons why. I will start with something more personal for me. Like I mentioned before, I descend from farmers. But even prior to that, as a descendant of those who were enslaved and brought to North America, ours was a farming tradition. We tended to these lands. And I think, sort of to the point you're making about that typical farmer image that so many of us have, I have the same image. Not so much these days, but I've had the same one. I always question, why is it that my ancestors are not seen in that image, particularly in a North American context? That's something that I've wrestled with. And particularly as I've been doing the work of farmers here, it's been something I really want to illuminate for folks, is that you should be able to see yourself in like the word farmer brings up for you. You should, because we all have the capacity to do it. And some of us even, we have the lineage and the heritage that our folks were involved in that. So for me, I think it's very personal to reclaim that narrative. There's centuries of time poured into this just on this continent alone, not to mention all of the wisdom that was brought here with them as well. And I don't want to see that discredited or discounted for what it was. So for me, like I say, very personal in that regard. But I think zooming out so that we can look at other folks as well, I think at its core, a farmer is a steward. They're someone who is deeply connected with the land. They are in tune with the environment, at least to the extent of, the climate and the weather that's happening, those sorts of things. They have to be very tuned into what's going on in the natural landscape. And a lot of it is outside of their control. And yet they show up every day. They do the work. Oh, they connect, they tend, they weed, they water, they do all of the things that are necessary to promote growth and life. And I think in remembering that, why can't we see ourselves in that? We should be able to, because we're able to do that on any scale. You can tend to a plant anywhere. You can. And why can't that be considered farming? So I think it's quite key to our work as farmers to just re-invite people into what farming is, perhaps reframe that for them in a sense, so that they can really start to see themselves as stewards, as contributors, as people who have the ability to perhaps grow something they can eat. I think there's really something special that happens when you put your hands in the soil, when you plant seeds, when you watch them grow, when you pick the fruit, whatever it is, and consume it. There's just there's something special about that, and I think everyone should have the ability to experience that.
What advice do you have to anyone that says like, well, I don't even know how to start? And I know you could start off small with like a plant, but if someone maybe would want to grow into maybe vegetation or fruit, like, is there any advice of whether it be resources or just where to start, because I think it is sometimes overwhelming, and that's always the hardest part, is just starting. It is so rewarding to start off something as a seedling and then see it grow into something you're consuming and nourishing your body with. So it's really like powerful when you think of the whole evolution of it. But yeah, I'll throw it back to you. Like, how can people start?
Yeah. So I'll do a mild shameless plug here for farmers, and then I can perhaps zoom out as well. But as part of the work of farmers, one of our offerings is something that we've called the Garden Simplicity, Balance, Joy, and Freedom Program. This is a course that is meant to help those people you're describing. How do I start? I want to be growing things, but what do I do? What can I do with the space that I have? And so through this program, we walk you through that process. So it's a 4-part program. The first one is focused around envisioning what we've called your local garden, sort of related to the letters and the words that farmers represent. It's really important to us that you slow down and you be considerate of what it is that you're wanting to do. And so through that initial phase, we're walking through the process of envisioning what your garden could look like. First of all, you want you to dream. What is it that you actually are envisioning here? Before you start to think about all of the logistics, before you start to get overwhelmed by all of the things that you have to figure out. In this first phase, we want you to explore what the possibilities are. We'll talk through, what spaces you have available, how you might want to use those, what sorts of things you can do to be contributing towards the land. We very much are working you through the process of developing that mindset that I've been talking about, so that it gives you the opportunity to think beyond just what your own personal goals are in your garden space, and think about the surrounding ecosystem, how you can be contributing in that way. So that's what we went through in the first phase. The second one is where we get into more of the detailed planning. This is where we get into some of the more specifics around what you will need, where we're going to plant things, what types of plants you should be planting based on where you are and the conditions of your space. Moving into the third phase is when we'll start to explore how can we really make your garden space personal to you. So we start to bring in elements of your identity and your cultural values and that sort of thing. And we work to incorporate that into your space. And so in the third phase, this is actually a portion of our work that is tied directly to the empathy agency. So there is a component of sort of coaching that's happening in tandem with the garden planning, so that if you have a family recipe, for instance, that's been passed down, is there a way that you can be growing certain things that are required for that recipe in your garden? We really believe that your garden should be personal. It should reflect who you are. So we want to bring that into it. So that's what's happening in phase 3. And then finally, in the fourth phase, if you ultimately choose to get to that point, we can come and help you actually bring it to life, plant the plants, etc. So like I say, this 4-part course that we offer is very much a starting place that where people can start. And each of the phases are optional. So you have to start with phase 1. The mindset is very important to our work, but then you can choose from there if you want to continue through the rest of the process. If it's sufficient for you to envision and to get your mindset ready, and then you want to take off with it, you can do that. So yeah, I think that's where someone can start. But to zoom out and be perhaps a little bit more practical for folks if they're not wanting to explore our course yet, I think the first step is always just to take note of your space, to spend time in the space, take note of the light that you have, at what times of day you're getting the light. But I think it's really just to first get acquainted with the area that we're working with. And then once you do that, you can start to make decisions. And I think the easiest advice I can always give is to start small, because it's easy to get overwhelmed. I even get overwhelmed in my own garden because I have lots of plans and thoughts, but I've gotten into the practice of thinking about a particular theme for the year. What is the theme that I want to work towards? That when I have a multitude of ideas, I can check back against that theme. Is it working in that direction, or is it maybe not related and we should wait for another year, because we can't do everything all at once. So, yeah.
That's beautiful. And I love, again, how thought out it is. And I'll be sure to include the link for farmers in the show notes. So if anyone does have questions on how to get started, please reach out to Destiny and her team. And, Destiny, as we're just kind of wrapping up here, I forgot to acknowledge this at the beginning, but you're actually based in British Columbia. You did your master's at University of BC. But can you tell me and our listeners a little bit, how has being in such a beautiful topography of BC with so many different elements of mountains and oceans, like how has that maybe even informed the way you're approaching farmers and as well as like your gardening and being connected with nature?
Yeah, I love that. I will say I am originally from Ontario as well. So when I made the choice to come to BC for my master's, I was leaving home, I was leaving family, etc. And I was moving to a different, more than just a different province, but moving to a completely different geologic area. Growing up in Ontario, I'm in love with the Great Lakes and still very much am. But yeah, I moved somewhere completely different. And I would say, I think one of the things I've enjoyed most having moved to BC is the pace here. It's a little bit less hustle and bustly like you would get in Ontario or other sort of larger urban areas. And I think that pace allows for more time to take in the environment around us here. And I think that it really shows in how folks behave here as well in some ways. I've noticed even just being like in a long lineup somewhere, just the general like vibe, the feeling you're getting off of the people who are like waiting in line, it's far less pressured here. So I think that there is a little bit more of an easygoing sort of West Coast vibe that I think certainly permeates through lots of things, which I certainly appreciate. I think it lends itself towards my personality a bit as well. But yeah, I think being situated here and where I live, like I have excellent mountain views. If I drive around town anywhere, you can't avoid them. And it's quite spectacular to see. And I think it's very difficult to lose sight of that connection that we have to the land when you're able to see such like beautiful things around you on a day to day. And so I think that that certainly influenced my approach perhaps with my work to farmers. It's always sort of top of mind for me because of what I see around me each day. But even if that weren't the case, I think I would still have a similar approach because one of the things actually I've been reflecting on lately is when we moved into the house that we currently live in, we have these very large trees around us. And from my bedroom window, I can see them. And when I moved in, I remember just being completely overtaken by them, just amazed. Every night I would lay in bed and look out the window and I was like, amazing. Like, it's just such a gift. It's beautiful. And I still have that feeling today. And that's after several years, right? So that hasn't worn off. And I think in my life, I tend to take a deliberately slow pace naturally, anyways. I think that has helped me to maintain that. So even though we've been here for years, I still love out the window and I'm still overtaken by the trees, the same trees that I've been looking at for years. I think that we're all able to cultivate that within ourselves, regardless of where we are. When we're able to slow ourselves down, I think is when we're able to then see what's around us. And there's always something around us. Even thinking of like a dense urban center like Toronto, you know, buildings everywhere, you can still look up. We can still see the sky. We can still be mesmerized by the clouds. The clouds are different every day. It's just a matter of that mindset and that perspective. So I think in cultivating that, we can experience that wherever we are. But I'm especially spoiled being in BC, certainly, which is not lost on me.
Beautifully said. And I had the privilege was coming to BC last year and I didn't understand the hype. Coming from Toronto, I never understood the hype. And I went there and I totally embraced that. Like everything you said, like I just felt like a huh, something in me just like went down and was like almost at peace. And I am trying to recreate that. I've moved into the city here and I'm close to Allen Gardens. So taking the opportunities to get into those green spaces because it's important. But just such beautifully said. And this was just such a great resource and insightful conversation, Destiny. So I want to thank you so much. And I just want to throw it to you. Are there any other closing thoughts you want to share with the listeners?
A closing thought. Let's see. I think it would just be not to discount what we're able to do. Every small decision that we make collectively, when we put them all together, it's meaningful and it matters. I think in this day and age, in this time, it can be very easy to be extremely overwhelmed, to see large scale catastrophes happening regularly, and to be dismayed. And I think to some extent we should be, naturally. But I don't think it should be to the extent that we lose hope. And I think focusing around the small things that we can do, wielding the power that we do have means something and it matters. And so we need to be doing that. And yeah, if we're all doing that, we will have an impact. I think don't focus in around the scale of the problem per se, but just focus in on what it is you can at least contribute to the solution.
Beautifully said. And that was a great way to end it. So that was Destiny Allen Green. She's the co-founder of Farmers. And I want to thank her so much for coming on #Fempire. Be sure to tune in next week for my next special guest, and we'll catch you there.